Go ahead and have a seat. Glad you're here with us. Band doing a great job for us this series. Wouldn't you agree? Give them a round of applause, just thanking them for the time that they take to get all that set up for us. Well, I want to say something, just kind of speak to the elephant in the room, or the aisle in the room, I guess would be the better way to say it. You notice the chairs are a little bit different. We've made some room in the back. We've made some room kind of in these middles. What we're trying to do is those big families, if you got more than 5 or 7, right, or something like, we're just trying to split you up. So what I've told the Ing family is the favorites, sit them next to you. The ones you're not so fond of, sit them away from you. No, I'm just kidding. We're not doing it for that reason. Well, the reason we're doing it is we're going to have a special time at the end of the service. And as a pastoral staff, as we were kind of walking through this pain series, and we were talking about the stuff that's been coming up in our life groups. And if you're not in a life group, I would encourage you, jump into a life group. That is the place where you grow. You grow in circles, not lines. Right now you're in lines, and it's great. It's great to be together. It's great to do that. But being in a circle means people see your face, right? And you see other people's faces. And there's a community that is built around a circle or a table, if you will. And if you're not in one, I would just encourage you, please get in one. Meet us at the Information Center. We're glad you get you set up in a group that totally fits you. Now, as we've discussed in these groups, what's going on kind of in our circles, we said, man, we really need something at the end of this pain series. We need a time of prayer. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure we made this easy for everybody to participate in. So at the very end of this message, we're going to have a special time of prayer. Time where we just kind of release maybe some of that anxiety, maybe some of that trauma that has come up as you walk through the pain series. We want this to kind of be a vent, to just kind of let all of that out. And so the reason the aisles are the way they are is so it's easy for you to participate. And we're going to have a ton of leaders available for that time. So just look forward to that time in your mind. Now let's just jump right into the message. Right into the message, let's talk about the most paralyzing and the most agonizing question in our pain. The most common question in pain. When we experience pain, when we experience hurt, what is the most common question we ask? Right. Why? Why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Or maybe we turn and say, why isn't this happening to somebody else? Right? Maybe we turn it like that. But that why question can be paralyzing. It could be even crippling. It could be depressing. It could pull you into a valley that seems like there's no way to get out of. Why is that deep question we ask in our pain? And what are we doing there? What we're doing there is we're looking for a therapy. We're looking for meaning. We're looking for purpose. We feel like if we could find some meaning, if we could find some purpose, if we can find an overall plan that is happening in this pain, then it's going to help us with this kind of agony. And that's what we've really dove into the last 4 weeks, is answering the question, why? Now, let me just say right up front, have we answered that question? I would say partially. I would say yes and no. I don't think in 4 weeks we've answered every single question about why. That's too presumptuous, right? We're thinking way too much of ourselves. But now, have we addressed the question? Yes, I think we have answered the question. We've answered the question in this kind of 2 ways at least. We've answered the first question is, why is there pain? If God is great and God is good, why is there pain? And the first way we answered that, we said, well, there's pain. The cause of pain is because God had a goal to make human beings, good people in a good place with a good gift called choice. But in making good people in a good place with a good gift called choice, they had a choice to either go good or evil, to do right or wrong, to obey or disobey. And the history in this book, the history of humanity, our history, is one where we chose the wrong way. And in choosing the wrong way, now we have the consequence of pain. We said that pain was human pollution. It's not God's creation, but human pollution. So what happens when we experience pain? We should think of it in 2 kind of ways. First, we could say to ourselves, I don't deserve this. There's very much a real sense that you could say when you're in pain, when you're in hurt, I don't deserve this. And what we said was, there's no specific sin that's connected to your specific suffering. There are times in the Bible we see that, but the majority is pain is the general consequence, the general fallout, if you will, the indirect connection to our choice of sin. So there's a sense in which you can say, I didn't deserve this. It's not a one-to-one correlation. You sin and it comes in like a heat-seeking missile and pain just boom, That's not how it works. It's more general. Now, in the same line of thinking, we need to say in pain, yes, I don't deserve this, but I don't deserve more than this. Life is a gift, right? God gives great gifts. He gives me family, He gives me prosperity, He gives me health. And then on the flip side of that, God gives protection. And God doesn't owe us protection from the pain or the pollution of our own creation. So it's very much in a sense we can say, I don't deserve this, but I don't deserve more than this. So why did pain happen? Pain happened because of choice. Well, that's not very comforting, right? So we looked at the second question of, well, why should I be hopeful in pain? Okay, I understand logically it's there because of human choice, and God doesn't owe me more, so when it happens, He's not unjust. But Paul, when I'm in pain, that doesn't feel real good. Well, we said the Bible doesn't leave us there. The Bible gives us comfort in pain. We looked at two ways it does. Perspective. It widens our gaze. It elevates our eyesight. We look to the eternal. God will take away eternal pain. God will give eternal bliss. So our lives are but a mist. Our hurt right now is like a storm in a teacup compared to the ocean of bliss that God offers us. We get perspective, and that gives us comfort. The second way we saw comfort is God's outcomes. He does something with our present pain. God has an intention behind every occurrence of pain in your life. He doesn't waste a hurt. That's what we said last week. That God will use it to form you, to make you better, more like Christ. So that's how we've answered the question. How have we not answered the question? Here's how we've not answered the question yet. We've said when pain happens, there is a why behind it. There's a cause for it. And there's a purpose behind it. There's a plan. There's an outcome that's going to happen. There is a why behind our pain. But does God tell us the why? There's a plan behind our pain, but does God reveal the specifics and the details of that plan? When you're hurting, when you're suffering, when you're in sorrow, will God just reveal to you every little detail of His plan to make you better? And the answer is no. No, He won't. I'm certain that, at times maybe, but in generally speaking, especially when we jump into this book right here, we don't see it. We don't see it. In fact, that's the big idea for today. Take the pen out of the seat back in front of you. I want you to find that spot in your bulletin. Right there in the middle of that first page, when you open up your bulletin, you'll see there's room for the big idea. It's a little box there. We have one big idea every time we come together, and this is the big idea. So if you're going to write one sentence, please write this one down. What's our response to that no? What's our response to the mystery of pain? That God, yes, we know there's a why, but He doesn't tell us the why. So what's our response to that? This is our response. We don't need to know why to worship. We don't need to know why to worship. Our souls can be settled with mystery. We can trust that His plan is there, even if His plan is not shown to us. Now, let me show you this in the book of Job. The book of Job. You cannot really talk about pain in the Bible without talking about the book of Job. Okay? And I'm going to show you Job's why story, if you will. It's probably the biggest why story in all of the Bible. Go to Job chapter 1, and if you don't have a Bible, I want you to know we're going to use this thing every Sunday. Most of what we do will be on the screen, but not all of it, because we're going to move around a little bit. Okay, so we really want you to have this book in service, whether on your phone or hard copy. I prefer hard copy, so much so that we will give you Bibles for free. So if you don't own a Bible, you can take one as you leave the auditorium, or if you want to shake my hand and get a Bible, you can meet me at the Information Center at the end of our service. I'm glad to give you a wonderful handshake and a wonderful Bible as well. We want to get one in your hand. So if you have a hard Bible, if you have a hard copy, if you go to about the middle, you're going to hit, hopefully, Psalms. Okay? And after Psalms, if you turn to the left, you're going to find the book of Job. And we're going to be in Job chapter 1. Job chapter 1. We're going to start with verse 1. Now, we're going to walk through the whole book of Job. Now, that's pretty big because it's 40 plus chapters. So I'm not going to cover every single verse. You will have lunch today, okay? So I'm not going to walk through the whole book. But we're going to get little highlights, and at times I'm going to have to summarize some pieces. All right? But let's read the important piece here. Job chapter 1, verse 1. This is Job's why story in his pain. Here's what it says. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And the man was blameless and upright, who feared God and turned away from evil. And there were born to him 7 sons and 5 daughters. 3 daughters. He possessed 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 5 yoke of oxen, 5 female donkeys, and very many servants, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East. His sons used to go and hold a feast in the house of each one on his day, and they would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. And when the days of the feast had run their course, Job would send and consecrate them, and he would rise early in the morning and offer a burnt offering according to the number of them all. For Job said, "It may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their heart." Thus Job did continually. Who is this guy? First, he is righteous. The first verse just starts out. You want to know something about Job? He's blameless. He is righteous. So righteous, verse 5 tells us, he's worried about his kids and their sin. He doesn't know if they've sinned, but he kind of preemptively says, just in case they've sinned, I'll offer a sacrifice. This guy is so close to God, loves God so much, wants to turn away from sin so much, even he thinks if there may be a sin, I'm going to handle it. Think about that. He doesn't have a hard time confessing sin. He goes the extra mile to make sure he covers sin in his family. He is the priest of his household. Now, when we see that word blameless, when we see the word righteous in there, we shouldn't read that Job is perfect. He's not perfect. That wouldn't match the storyline of the Bible. A better way to think of it is Job is blameless in the sense of there's no observable sin in his life. If you were to talk about Job, you couldn't say, yeah, he's missing something, well, right here. You couldn't really see. His integrity and his innocence is just at the top level. Now, again, he's not perfect. A better way to see this is there's no observable evil. Job in chapter 31 would recite what he believes is his innocence, what he believes is his integrity. He says, I'm good to my wife. I'm good to my servants. I'm good to my family. I'm good to the poor. And I avoid idolatry. What is he saying there? You can't really see a sin on me. These are my public displays, right? So this is the way we should view Job's righteousness. Not perfect, but blameless. Then it says he's prosperous. He's got all kinds of livestock, right? And in the ancient Near East, that's how you measured your wealth, was how many animals do you own? Well, he's got 4 or 5 zoos worth of animals. He's a very wealthy man. It says he's the greatest in the East. Now, this sets up a test. And before we get to that test, we got to stop here and remember what we've covered the last 4 weeks. All that Job has, is this a paycheck given to him because he's a good person? No. It's not how we should view this. Everything he has is a gift from God. Yes, he's a good man. He's an even blameless man, but he's still a sinful man. He's still a fallen man. He's still in a sinful world. He's still in a fallen world. Everything he has is a gift, and Job will acknowledge that later on in the chapter. Everything he has is a gift. God does not owe him what he has given him. God does not owe him protection from pain. Then comes in this test. Satan comes in. And this is what Satan says to God. Look at verse 6, chapter 1. Now there was a day when the sons of God, think of these as angelic spiritual beings, came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan also came among them. The Lord said to Satan, "From where have you come?" Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth and from walking up and down on it." And the Lord said to Satan, "Have you seen my servant Job? There's no one like him on earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil." God is very proud of Job. Now look at Satan's twist here. Verse 9. Then Satan answered the Lord and said, "Does Job fear God for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You're protecting him." You see that? Look at continue on with the verse. "You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But you stretch out your hand and you touch all he has, and he will curse you to your face. What is Satan saying here to God? Dude, he only serves you because the gifts you give. The only reason he's righteous is because you reward him. The only reason he's pious is because you make him prosper. God, you buy his worship. You see that? See that challenge? Satan says, but if you take away, really verse 2 and verse 3 of the first chapter, if you take away his family, if you take away his possessions, if you take away his health, guess what? He'll lose verse 1. He won't be righteous anymore. He'll curse you to your face. So God concedes and says, well, let's test that. This is what God is doing right here. God is going to show not only Satan, I think we have to broaden our scope here. It's not only Satan who's learning a lesson, it's the millions and billions of saints who have read this book since its authorship. And the test is this: will the righteous pursue God absent of his rewards? Will the soul really be satisfied in a pursuit of God and not of personal gain? Can the pious really be pious without the earnings of prosperity? Does God have to buy his worshipers? Is this a valuable lesson to learn? Absolutely. Absolutely, especially for the story of the Jews and the story of Christians. To know this fact that even if I suffer here, I can still serve God. Even if there's no personal gain here, no prosperity here, nothing to be gained here, I can love God without being infatuated with his gifts. He can satisfy enough. This is an important lesson to learn. This test is vitally important. And so what happens? God removes his gifts. He just stops giving. He takes the hedge of protection away from Job. And Job suffers probably more than anybody in the world, second maybe to Jesus Christ himself. What happens is this: raiders come. They come in and they kill off his servants and they take a majority of his livestock. Then it says a fire from God comes down and burns up all of his sheep. Then it says a wind hits the house that all his family is at, besides his wife, and the house falls and kills all of his children. Later on in the chapter, Job's health itself is compromised. He has sores all over his body, and he uses a piece of pottery to scrape off the boils that form on his skin. Think about what's happened in a small amount of time, in basically a little bit more than one chapter of the Bible. The greatest man of the East has become the least, to be pitied above all. Now look at what Job says. This is remarkable. This is why I think God chose Job for this test, but look at his faith. If you jump to chapter 1, verse 21, this is what Job says. Think of that idea that life is a gift, that I don't deserve more than what God has given me. Look at verse 21. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Do you see how he orders that? He doesn't say the Lord took away, maybe later he'll give. He doesn't say that. He says give first. Why? Because all of life is a gift. Job doesn't see all this stuff I have is not a paycheck. I have not merited this. God has just given it. I don't deserve it. I'm a fallen man in a fallen world, a sinful man in a sinful world. Even though I'm righteous and maybe the best, the most blameless man on the planet, I'm still fallen. I don't deserve God's gifts. I don't deserve God's protection. And God has decided in his justice to withhold. He's not unjust in this. Job suffers. And then his friends come in. And really, if you look at your Bible, you can go from really chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way, you can move all the way to 37, Job 37. Let me just summarize this because it gets a little redundant. Because what happens is this: Job has all these friends who come in. About one of them gives good advice. But all the other ones basically say this: Job, you can't be innocent. You just can't be. Now, we know that Job is innocent. God knows Job is innocent. Even Satan acknowledges that Job is innocent. But Job's friends are the only one who believe he's guilty. See, in their mind, the world works like this. It's like a calculator, right? Those adding machines where the tape kind of rolls up. This is what they think the universe is. That if you punch in the right good, it'll add up to the sum of your rewards. And you could kind of rip off and give that receipt to God. If I do good, he'll bless me. Conversely, if I do bad, what happens? I suffer. They have no room in their theology, no room in their understanding of the world for innocent suffering. But think about the Christian worldview. How does that work? What about Jesus? No one suffered more than him. Was there anything in him that was wrong? He had never sinned, ever, and he suffered more than anybody. That doesn't fit within the Christian worldview, but that doesn't even fit within the Old Testament worldview, even before Christ came. See, they believe that God is like this cosmic check cashing place, right? You bring in your check and they give you the cash. This is what God is. You bring in your merit and he'll give you a happy life, a happy wife, a boat, a vacation home, all that stuff. But we know that's not true. That's not how things work. But this is the mindset of Job's friends. Job, you must be sinning. There's no other reason behind this. If we ask why there is suffering, it must be because of sin. And Job says, no, that's not it. He maintains his integrity. He maintains his innocence all the way. But something starts to grow in Job. And it's the question why. He's puzzled. The mystery doesn't settle well with him. If you go to chapter 7, I know I made you move a little bit, but if you go to chapter 7, this one won't be on the screen, but I just want to show you this. Chapter 7, verse 20, the why starts to grow in him. Look at, this is chapter 7, verse 20. It says, if I sin, what do I do to you, you watcher of mankind? Why have you made me your mark? Why have I become a burden to you? Why, God? Why? Point out the sin. He's slipping here in his mindset, his view of God. That grows in chapter 9. You just move a couple pages over, verse 20. Though I'm in the right, my mouth would condemn me. Though I am blameless, he would prove me perverse. I am blameless. I regard not myself. I loathe my life. It is all one, therefore I say, he destroys both the blameless and the wicked. When disaster brings sudden death, he mocks at the calamity of the innocent. What is he doing here? He's saying, God, I don't understand. You seem to be unjust. You make a mockery of the calamities of the innocent. You see what he's doing here? Now, he's not cursing God. We shouldn't see that. He's not moving into unbelief, but he is struggling right now. We see this in chapter 13, verse 15. Look at this. It's belief and unbelief at the same time. Verse 15 of chapter 13. Though he slay me, he's speaking of God, I will hope in him. Yet I will argue my ways to his face. What is he saying there? Again, he hasn't lost his faith, but he wants to argue his case. God, you owe me some answers. So he starts to question God. If you would just bring it in a courtroom, God, I could plead my case. Do you see how this why burning inside of him has elevated his pride? Now he thinks he's owed something. Now, this is the most remarkable part of the book of Job. Not only the endurance of Job, but the response of God. This is where we jump to chapter 38. God says, let's turn the pages here. Let's turn the tables here, if you will. So you want to ask me some questions? Wait. Let me ask you some questions. Look at how chapter 38 starts. The Lord said to Job, out of the whirlwind, God came to meet him. Not in the quiet, right? Not in a peaceful way. In a whirlwind, God shows up. I think there's a reason for that. And this is what he said. And said, who is this that darkens my counsel by words without knowledge? Dress for action like a man. He's saying, get ready. You want to get in the ring with the Almighty? Get your gloves on. That's what he's saying. Man up, right? Put your dukes up. However manly phrase you want to use, right? I will question you, and you make it known to me. What's remarkable here is what God does not do. This is always probably the part of the book of Job that I always find so mysterious. We know as the readers, Satan knows, God knows. Why is Job going through this? It's a test. It's to show the world, to show the demonic realm, the angelic realm, humans, all of us. It's to show what? That we could be pious and not seek after prosperity, that we could just pursue God and not his gifts and still be satisfied. That is a valuable lesson. God never tells Job that. Imagine yourself being in Job's case. You're mourning the loss of 10 children. You're mourning the loss of all your wealth. You're mourning the loss of your health. And now your wife is telling you, Job, just curse God and die. Basically, she's saying, would you just commit suicide? I mean, just imagine what he's going through right now. That's some marital strife right there. Will you just commit suicide? And Job, in his agony, wouldn't it be great if God just said, Job, here's what's happening. You don't know this, but here's what's happening. I'm testing you. I want to show something. I want to show that you'll just love me just for me and not for my gifts. Think of the thousands, Job, the millions, Job, the billions of people, Job, from this moment that will know that they can suffer and still sing. That their faith can be a pursuit solely of me and not of personal gain. Job, your story will allow martyrs to joyfully sing to their deaths. Job, your story will help those in agony grieving mothers, widows, children who are orphaned. This will help. Do you think that would be helpful to Job in his agony? Immensely helpful, right? This could probably, every time he takes that pottery shard and he cuts off another boil, he might say, that's another person, right? Or that's another 100 people that will endure. That would be helpful. And yet God never gives him that. Isn't that remarkable? Never tells him why. The second thing he doesn't say is he never mentions a sin. God doesn't answer the question of Job's friends. He doesn't say, oh, here's your sin, this is why you suffered. Right? Here's your specific situation that has brought about this consequence. Here's why you've suffered. He never says that. You know what God comes in with? God's response in the whirlwind, God does this. I'm awesome. Not an answer, just a display of his awesomeness. He says in chapter 38, he said, do you know how deep the foundations were laid in creation? Are you the father of the rain? Do you know how to bring the sun up? Sorry, Job, were you there when I made everything? Job, are you there when I manage everything? The end of chapter 38 and pretty much all of chapter 39 then moves on to these animals. And I think this is interesting because how was the wealth of Job measured? In his livestock, all of these animals. God comes up with a list from lions to hawks. I mean, almost everything in between there. And what does God do? God is showing him all of these animals. You possessed none of those. These are the wild animals, the ones that cannot be tamed. You can't domesticate these animals, but these animals, dude, they're my pets. Right? And then he goes on, there's in chapter 40 and 41, he uses these great creatures called Behemoth and Leviathan, probably the hippopotamus and the crocodile. But I think even more than that, they're these cosmic powers that battle with God. Maybe they're false gods of the ancient Near East, or they're just symbols of satanic kind of powers. And God says, I can corral these. You think Leviathan is big, right? This cosmic power? I put a hook in him. What is God doing there? God is showing Job, do you know who I am? I'm God. You don't understand these things. These things are way beyond you. You have no comprehension of how to domesticate these wild creatures. You have no idea the universe, the vastness of space that I have created. Your understanding is about this big, where my understanding is much bigger. And then I think he gets to the heart of the matter. In chapter 40, verse 8, God takes personal offense at Job's charge against God's justice. And this is what God says in a lot of satire here, okay? He is very sarcastic. So if you're a sarcastic person, you got it from God. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, but look at what God says. God is basically going to say this to Job. Job, so you think you can be God? You think you could do my job? All right, do it then. You do it, I'll back off. All right, look at what he says in chapter 40, verse 8. Will you even put me in the wrong? Will you condemn me that you may be in the right? You're judging my justice? This is what he says. Verse 9. Have you an arm like God? Can you thunder with a voice like his? Adorn yourself with majesty and dignity. Clothe yourself with glory and splendor. Pour out the overflowings of your anger and look on everyone who is proud and abase him. Look on everyone who is proud and bring him low. Tread down the wicked where they stand. Hide them all in the dust together. Bind their faces in the world below. Then I will acknowledge to you that your own right hand can save. You enact justice. Let's see how strong your arm is. Fine, you put the badge on. Let me see you police the world. That's what God is basically saying. Job, you don't understand. You don't know how powerful I am. You don't understand my justice. You can't do what I do. You can't know what I know. At the very end, Job says in chapter 42, verse 4. Actually, let's read up to verse 3. Verse 2. I know that you can do all things. This is chapter 42, verse 2. I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore, I have uttered what I did not understand. I think that's the important part of this book. Things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Hear and I will speak. I will question you, and you make it known to me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. I've met you, God. Therefore, I despise myself, and I repent in dust and ashes. Now, what is he repenting of? What is he turning from? God has not challenged Job's defense of his integrity, of his innocence. There's no specific sin. What is Job repenting of? He's repenting of this. His pride. His thought that God owed him an answer. And God basically came in, not with the answer of here's why this is happening. God came in and said, Job, there are many things you don't understand. There's a list of things you don't understand. The gap between your knowledge and omniscience is pretty big. Job, your suffering is one of the things you'll never understand. Just like you don't understand how to tame these animals. Just as you don't understand how to create something out of nothing. Just as you don't understand the management of creation. Just like you don't understand the scales of justice. You don't understand all these things. Add to the list your suffering. Job, you don't need to know why to worship. You just need to know that there is a why. And that's what Job acknowledges. His view of God was too small. The onus that God had for him, that he deserved an answer, was wrong. That's what he repents of. That's what he turns from. Job does not need to know why to worship. Now let me give you my why story. Nothing compared to Job. But somewhat like Job, I felt like I was doing a lot of right things. So I went off to school, or I got married, then went off to school, got through college, got a degree in theology, went all the way to Louisville, Kentucky, right? Home of fried chicken and everything else fried, right? Went all the way out there, and my wife said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to work, full time. You work part time. Let's knock this master's degree out, and let's get back to Cali. And I'm like, absolutely, right? So that was our idea. And we're serving God. We're loving Jesus. It's super exciting. I'm learning a ton of stuff. I'm having a ton of fun. It is good. It is good. We're about halfway there. And in May 2007, now again, I'm 3,000 miles away from my family. And in May 2007, my grandpa, who's been struggling with dementia, passes away. And that was a big hit for me. because my grandpa was the one who actually took me in high school. When I was kicked out of my home when I was in high school, my grandpa really came in, stepped up, and pretty much all of my high school years, I was staying with him. And so he was the man that really helped me through a really hard time when I was in high school. So to lose him was extremely hard, especially from dementia. If you've ever dealt with that, the phrase is true. You lose them before you lose them. And if you're going through that, you probably know what I'm talking about. I remember my last visit with him 2 weeks before he passed away. I mean, he couldn't recall pretty much anybody in the room except for my grandma, myself, and of course my beautiful wife. My grandpa always had a good choice of women, right? So he loved my wife and always knew her face and knew who she was. You could tell. She walked in the room, smile. I walked in the room, he's like, oh man, disappointment, right? Is Lindsay coming, right? And so that was a tough one. That was really hard. And so I was sad that I couldn't be with my family. I couldn't be with my grandma, and we couldn't mourn together. And my grandma and I were really close since my dad passed away when I was young, and that's her son. And so my grandma and I were really, really close. And so it was hard not to be there for my grandma when my grandpa passed away. Well, that was May 2007. In December of 2007, just a couple months removed from that, my grandma, who just had a stroke not that long ago, she passes away. And that was hard too. My grandma, on the other side, on my mom's side, she was very instrumental in my life. My grandma was very persistent. I was a very difficult kid. I know that's hard to manage, but I was a difficult kid. And most of my difficulties were because I just have severe dyslexia. And so learning is a very hard process for me. And my grandma was incredibly persistent. I mean, she was crying, I was crying, everybody's crying, right? It was just a struggle. And I didn't learn how to read till I was 13 years old. And so I was going through all of junior high, not even right before I got to high school, I finally learned to read. And it was my grandma's persistence. Can you imagine that? It was my grandma's just stubborn persistence. I'm going to make this boy read. Right? I'm going to get him through high school. Okay, and it was her work that finally made that break after all that struggle, all the tears, all the anxiety, and her persistence paid off. I graduated high school, graduated college, got 2 graduate degrees after that. And it wasn't for her and her persistence, that wouldn't have happened. So her passing away, that was hard too. Again, it couldn't be with my family. I'm 3,000 miles away. I can't grieve with them. I wasn't there as her health declined. I wasn't there for the stroke. I wasn't there for when she fell. I was just away. And really, my wife and I were there to study and get home, but we were barely making it. I mean, barely making it financially. So flying out for these funerals just wasn't a big option. And so we were able to make it to one. And that was hard. That was hard on my family. Now they understood, they knew where we were at. So a couple months after that, in 2008, I get another call from my family. My stepdad. Again, my father passed away in 1996. My stepdad, in 2008, gets diagnosed with cancer, a cancer that has been there. And as a veteran of the Vietnam War, this is where he got this cancer, but because of, we don't want to get the politics of it, but because of certain medical, he was mishandled. And this cancer grew. This cancer is normally outside the body, got inside the body, got in the bloodstream, got everywhere. And they finally found it. Well, when they found it, it was just too late, right? And that kind of gets a little angry with how he was treated medically. And so his body begins to swell everywhere. And they tell him, you have 3 months. And I think he died in 2 months. And so this is death after death after death after death. At this point, I'm in Louisville again, in Kentucky, away from my family. I can't mourn with my mom. My mom, who has now lost her mother and who was there to care for her, and now has lost really her second husband, right? And my mom is hurting. I love my mom, and I can't be there. So at this point, I'm in Louisville, and I'm basically dreading any phone conversation that comes from California. I don't want to pick up. I don't want to know. In fact, I think there's a phone call that happens 2 weeks after that, and this is what I say. And I know this sounds terrible, but this is what I say. Okay, who died this time? It just really got to that point. Our Christmases were half. I mean, that's when you really start to notice, our Christmas card used to be this big. Now it's this big. I mean, there's a lot of people missing. And so a couple months after that, a little bit before midway in 2008. Again, there's 3 deaths within a year, about within 9 months. I get to make a call to my family. And this is an exciting phone call. I call up my family. I think I call my sister first, and then my mom, and then my aunt, and then my grandpa. And I get to tell them, hey guys, I'm so excited right now. I get to have a positive conversation with you, right? I mean, when you deal with grief, like there's some of that like humor that's just released, right? That you just kind of have to acknowledge stuff. And I remember saying, hey, guys, I get to say that there's life in our family again. Right? Lindsay's pregnant, and everybody's excited. My grandpa's excited. My grandpa's like crying, which that doesn't really ever happen, right? It's just, we're all excited. Well, a couple months go by, and I'm studying in our little townhome. I'm studying in our little townhome, and I'm downstairs, and I'm working on my computer. My wife's upstairs, and I think she's in the bathroom taking a shower, and I hear this scream. And it's a scream I'll never forget, ever. And I knew something was wrong. I didn't even move the laptop off of my lap. I just went straight for the stairs. And in doing that, the computer cord was actually wrapped around my foot, and the computer slung and slammed against the window and broke. Not the window, the computer. And I didn't care. I'm running upstairs. Something's wrong with my bride. I need to get up there. I get up there, and she tells me that there's blood. I don't know what to do. What do we do? I said, well, we're going to the hospital. We'll call them on the way. All right, so we get in the hospital. We get there, and they check us in, and they do all this stuff, and we're sitting there waiting. We have no idea what's happening right now, and we're a young couple. We're like 25 years old. She's away from her mom. We're away from our family. We don't know what's happening. And this nurse comes in, very nice nurse. All right, she tells us that, I'm sorry, but you lost the baby. And you need to come back later today. We need to schedule a procedure because you're so far along, we have to actually remove the child. And I remember my wife being wheeled away on a little gurney, a little bed. And that's what really just got to me. That she's going away, and I can't take away her pain. I'm not okay with that. I can experience pain. I'm fine. I'll endure. But there's no reason. I don't want her to have to endure, especially alone. And we get back, and this is embarrassing. And I'm going to tell you this right now. This is probably the most embarrassing moment of my life, probably the lowest moment of my life. And if you think less of me after this, I understand, but I want to be honest with you. I quit everything. I quit going to work, saw no reason for it. I quit going to school. You want me to learn about this? About that guy? Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Because here's what I felt more than anything. I felt betrayed. God, I moved all the way out here, 3,000 miles away from my family, and you rip 3 of them away, and I can't be there to help them grieve. I'm trying to serve you over here. And then my wife has to go through this pain, and I can't bring her to her mother to help her grieve. God, why are you doing this? And here's the moment. I remember being in my townhome. I didn't talk to friends. I didn't want to see their kids. I don't want anything, man. And I remember being on the floor of our bathroom upstairs and just crying in anger, feeling betrayed by God. And here's what I said to him. Now, I'm not proud of this moment. In fact, it hurts me to even say it again. But here was my prayer. God, if you want me to love you, you're going to have to put that love in my heart, because there's none in there. Because I hate you. If you're going to want me to love you, you got to put it in my heart, because I don't love you right now. And you know what God did at that moment? I think God met me at that moment. Let me tell you what God did not do. God did not answer my question. God did not heal my mind. I knew the theological answers. I knew how to navigate through the logical contradictions of pain. I understood the strategy and the defense against the Theodicy. I knew how to solve the problem of evil, but that was all up here. Betrayal was felt right here. And God met me in that moment, and he didn't heal me here. He healed me here. I think it's interesting that Job's heart is settled in his suffering when? Is it the arguments of his friends? Is it his own rationale, which is good for most of the book? Is it the logic that really soothes his mind? What is it that calms the spirit of Job in his suffering? What is it? He met God, right? God met him in a whirlwind. What calmed my soul? What satisfied my deepest longing? What gave me peace in my heart? I met God. Not in a whirlwind, but in a pool of tears on my bathroom floor in prayer. And see, this is what I want to offer to you. As we've walked through this series, I don't want to pretend that we've solved your experience of pain. No, that'd be a foolish thing to say. Have we given some helpful handlebars? That's true. But the only thing that's going to solve your pain, the only thing that's going to heal your heart is to meet God in prayer. It's to bring that pain to him. And some of you, you've got pain that's 30 years old. You need to bring it to him. I'm going to ask Pastor Joe, to come out on stage. I'm going to ask our leaders, if you're a leader here and you've been designated a certain spot, will you just move to that spot if you do that for us? Church, you see that we have a lot of leaders around the room. You're going to be filled. I mean, there's leaders everywhere. Joe's going to sing a song for us, kind of acoustic, not very loud volume, and the song basically says, God, will you weep with me? God, will you be there for me? God, I want to meet you in the midst of my pain. Church, I want to invite you right now, if you would stand up as we move into this time. Everybody kind of stand to your feet, put your Bible to the side. Here's what I want to offer you. See, here's what we do in our pain. Here's what we often do. We take our pain and we kind of push it into the closet of our heart. And we think to ourselves, if I leave my pain in the darkness of that closet, that it'll die there. But friend, you know, it doesn't die there. It grows there. Resentment, that's how resentment is built. That's not how healing happens. How do we find healing? Right? How do we find that heart, deep healing in our lives from pain? We go to God in prayer. So this is what I want to offer you. In fact, this is the best thing I have to offer you. If there's any lesson I have to learn in the pain that I've felt, is the only way to find true healing is not in here, but it's in here through prayer. So here's what we're going to do. It's very simple. We're going to sing this song, a very powerful song. Very powerful song. And it's a prayerful song. So I invite you to sing it. Sing this song. It's deep. It is rich. God, will you weep with me? God, will you turn my lament into a love song? Man, that's powerful. So even if you stay where you are and all you do is sing, you're praying. But really, I want to encourage you to find one of these leaders around here. We've got a lot of them. Bring your pain to God in prayer and see how he heals your heart. I'm going to step off this stage in a moment. Joe's going to lead us in song. We'll sing the song for about 4 or 5 minutes. Right when I get off this stage, don't hesitate. Don't wait for verse 1, verse 2. Don't wait for the chorus. Don't wait for the bridge. Do you have pain in your life? We all have pain. We all hurt. Have you brought it to God in prayer? Has your heart been healed? If you've got pain and you don't feel like you've got healing fully here yet, please come. Please come. Speak to a leader. They'd love to listen. They'll be able to hear you because the music will be soft. As I step off the stage, let's sing and let's seek God in prayer. Again, anytime, come forward after I come off the stage. Church, let's sing and let's pray.